Hello.
Hello out there.
We are back. We're back for another podcast. We are getting ready to go see some good friends of ours, our extended family in Dallas, Texas. But we did want to squeeze in a podcast now, and then I think we will also do one from the road. So I've been talking about this and wanting to do this for the last couple of weeks, and things have just come up, but I just realized that things will always come up, and so we have to make time for these things. So what I want to talk about today is just a simple concept of really thinking about being helpful and being of service and in service of others, and what that looks like. And really, I think there is a connection there in terms of finding a purpose for yourself and your life. So that's kind of where I want to go. I think for me, I chose the industry of hospitality, which is really all about being of service and helping other people either enjoy their experience that they've paid money for, and really creating memorable experiences. And a large part of what happens at the hotels that I've worked at is really kind of helping our team to understand what we're really trying to do for our guests. And at the end of the day, our guests, we want them to leave with a feeling great, feeling good about the money that they've invested in this memorable experience. And the last thing I want is for them not to be happy with the time that they spent, because the time is just so precious. So I'll ask Lex to weigh in on her thoughts about that.
Well, my thoughts about the being of service. I remember just that was always kind of part of, and it's not like my family. It's not like I grew up with parents that were always in service all the time. But I do remember as a very young child hearing language about, or hearing my mom and dad talk about, or I got the distinct impression that these conversations were happening when I was even just very young, about doing service, helping your fellow man. And it was important that it was not done with the intention of getting praise. I remember that little nugget of detail in that as a young. It was important that it not be like, well, you're only helping, you're only being of service so that you can be glorified or exalted somehow. I don't know. That's just a random thought. I haven't thought about that in a long time until just now. But yeah, so I think there's all kinds of ways to be in service, and there's all kinds of ways to be helpful. And I was thinking, as you said that in the intro, sometimes the biggest way of being helpful is not being unhelpful. I find often questioning people around me, and many times my own self. Now, was that helpful? Now, in any way, shape, or form, did that comment or action or whatever,
did that add to the situation, or did it actively detract from the situation?
Yes. So the helpful part in that sense, I think, is a little bit different than what
I think it's a little bit different than what we're talking
about being of service.
Yeah.
And having a purpose, feeling like you have a purpose. And I think both you and I, Chris, have chosen long-term relationships with being of service in some, in some regard or another.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like the Hotel California. I checked in and I've just never left.
Well, and it's, yeah. I mean, yes.
But it's not, I mean, I say that, I mean, it's not like it's a bad thing. I think, you know, what I've really come to understand, and it sounds really stupid.
I bet it won't.
When I hear myself say it out loud. But it's like you actually have to like being, you know, actually like to like helping people, because if you don't, then you're choosing an industry that you're just not going to be successful in. So you really have to have that attitude that you really want to make somebody's experience better. You somehow want to expand, enhance that. There's some sort of joy that you can bring to these individuals' lives by, you know, adding some part of you to that equation. And I think if we think about it in those terms, we can be better. But I think sometimes we get in the way of that. And
how do you mean by that?
Well, I think that
we get in the way of being better.
Yes, we get in the way of our own. We get in the way of ourselves, because I think there's a lot of. Because I think if you're doing an act that's purely for somebody else, then, you know, there's no it's pure. I think it's pure. I think when you have your own interest somewhere in there, it kind of gets a little bit, it gets a little muddy. And I think for me, I do like the idea that, you know, especially being in the hotel business, if somebody comes to the hotel and,
get away,
you know, we are able to deliver everything that they expect, and that they can walk away with, wow, that was great, then that's a success. And that makes me happy. Conversely, when that's not the case, that really doesn't make me feel good.
Of course not.
So, you know, but I don't know how many people in the world have that, you know. It's like, I don't know how many people are just kind of like, well, I don't know. I'm just here in my job.
You mean like how many, like you feel like there's people that wouldn't be bothered by it?
Yes.
Oh, that's
and
sad.
That troubles me. Or it makes me sad. Trouble is maybe a word that I'm not meaning, but it makes me say, well, why doesn't that bother you? You know,
how much pride do you take in your job?
Yeah. But, you know, everybody is on a different path, and I think we are taught in some ways that everybody has to follow some sort of same rule for progress sometimes, and that's just not the case. I think it's those people that kind of break the rules sometimes, that kind of or animals break the rules sometimes, and just, you know, decide that, hey, we're going to do something, we're going to do it this way this time, and that's where you discover a brand new road. That's where you create like a whole new chapter that you would not have had access to, you know, if you hadn't done that. So
yes.
Okay.
I mean, I don't really have anything to add to that.
Okay.
I think what you're talking about is that what they call the outliers, you know, people that do take that risk or take that leap of sheer imagination and sheer craziness, but then it works out. I think that that's what you're referring to. And then about also not understanding how some people just don't have.
They just don't care sometimes.
And so
it
then
seems
how
like
much
it
pride
doesn't.
can that be? How much pride can they possibly be taking? And then that kind of leads the question to, and this might be entirely off topic, what are they looking for? Like if it's not pride in their job, what is it? What are they valuing about even being there at all?
Yeah, and
now the paycheck. When you're talking about being in an industry, the service industry of hotels or any number of things like that, the paycheck is one thing, but there's so many easier ways. If you don't care about being of service, there's so many easier ways to make, a paycheck.
Well, and that just goes to a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
That I don't know that
I'm sorry. I think I just,
but no, that's not a bad thing.
I was being an outlier and I was going against the rules.
I think that that's fine. I think that that's good. You were not being an outlier. You were adding to the conversation.
No, I felt like being an outlier. That was,
Oh.
That was good.
You were trying to demonstrate that you were an outlier.
I wanted to be an outlier, yeah.
Well done, my dear.
Anywho,
I think that now I just lost my thought because that was really that was good what you said. I think if I had to kind of like summarize where I was trying to go with the whole idea, it's just that I do think that everybody is on a different path. And, I might not understand it, but that's okay. I think seeing every different walk of life and every different way that people are experiencing things is one of the reasons that we are here. And being open to those experiences, and we can choose those experiences or not. And so I think that is also why it is a good idea not to be judgmental, but maybe more of an observer in certain things, and seeing how these experiences kind of go for people in our lives.
I think that's a key point, is to take the stance of the observer more readily and more quickly than the stance of the judge.
Yeah.
Rarely, if ever, or very seldom, I think, is immediately taking the stance of the judge even appropriate. And it's often the stance that we take first. And on the rare occasion that is appropriate, well, that's a rare occasion. But to be the observer doesn't necessarily mean that we're passing judgment one way or another. It is neither good nor bad, but we're observing it. And
experiencing it too, to
or at
an
least
extent or another.
Yeah, at least experiencing it as the observer.
Yep.
Yep. And I think that's a good jump off for our next podcast. Whenever we do our next podcast, I would like to talk about that.
Okay. And
that's a little cliffhanger for everybody.
A little cliff note. So
cliffhanger, not a cliff note.
Oh, right. That's a different thing. You're right. Oh, you're so smart, honey.
Take care, my dears.
Okay, we're out, and we'll talk to everybody very soon.
Bye.
Bye.